It is our first time recording on location. I am at the Thomas Cole National Historic Site in Catskill. And our guest today is someone, Brett, who you have worked with in the past. So why don't you introduce us to Betsy?
Yeah, so my pleasure. Betsy Jacks has been the executive director of the Thomas Cole National Historic Site since 2003. So we're in this historic building. What is the significance of this building? And what have you done with it to keep it intact or true to its historic
It
roots?
contains a lot of stories, this building. When I first came here, 2003, in December, it was a complete and utter wreck. The floor was just you couldn't walk across the middle of it. It was full of holes, and hanging from everywhere were bits of rafters and cobwebs, and it was completely dark and dank. And then in the far corner there, on the other side of the building, was a unfortunate installation of a 1980s kitchen with lime green appliances, drop ceiling. I mean, it was really a horrible sight. And the National Park Service at the time called this the most important restoration happening in the country today. And because this very building was where Thomas Cole painted some of his best known work. And he and we called it the old studio because across the lawn is the beautiful new studio that, as you mentioned in the introduction, was reconstructed. So through that door to my left, you can see Thomas Cole's easels, beautiful big easels. It looks like he made them himself. And just try to picture on those easels those canvases that now made him famous, such as his series, The Voyage of Life, which is now at the National Gallery of Art. It was just made right here in this humble building, which is a barn. And Thomas Cole called it his temporary painting room because he thought, I'll just paint in here for a short while. But he ended up being in this studio for about 7 years, so produced many of his best known works. All right, so we are walking out of the Cole Center onto the patio, and I am looking at a 180-degree view of all the buildings on this site, the old studio, the main house, the beautiful Catskill Mountains, and it is glorious. Maybe we should just start in the new studio because that is often a surprise to people that we have a whole museum here on our site. I should first talk about the building. The new studio that we're about to go to is both a historic building and a new building. So it was originally designed by Thomas Cole and unfortunately demolished in the 1970s. So when I first got here, it was gone completely, but we rebuilt it. So what you see now is an exact reconstruction.
And how much of his original art do you have here? Or, how is it represented on this property?
We have quite a bit in our own collection, and then every year we borrow paintings for a loan show. So you'll get to see new ones each time you come. When we first reconstructed this building, we had the money, we had the contractor, they put the first framing up, and it was the first time that you could see the full shape of it. When they get the 2x4s up and you can see the whole roof line and everything. And I thought, oh my God, this is so Thomas Cole. It was so tall. It sort of made you feel like you were small in the universe and that the universe was so big in comparison. So it's this very tall building. I just loved that. It's so beautiful the way he designed it with this mahogany trim that goes all around the roof line. And if you look really carefully, you can see the detail. Do you see what's on the corner of the roof?
Looks like acorns.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's adorned with acorns. Oh, wow.
And were those did you get that from the original plans, or were there drawings or something like that?
Yeah, because it was only demolished in the 70s, we have a lot of photographs of it as well. So we have his original drawings, we have the photographs, and then we had these brilliant architects who specialize in historic restoration. The architect we worked with, John Misick, and he could tell us things about it that we had never seen in the photographs. He could tell the exact dimensions of every pane of glass. They did this telemetry that measured everything and put it into a spreadsheet. He noticed trim from the one interior photo we had. He could see the trim in the dim speckled old photograph. It was really incredible.
Amazing.
Okay, so we're walking up on the little portico, and in we go. So people don't always expect to see this inside what looks like a building from the 19th century, but on the inside, we made it a perfect gallery for borrowing art. And when I say perfect, I mean we have to keep the temperature and humidity within a very small range. So the whole system that manages that is tucked up in there in a loft behind that wall to keep everything in here pristine for the artwork. So we're able to borrow art from anywhere now. So we have Thomas Cole paintings, Frederick Church paintings, and right now in here we also have works by indigenous artists. We have contemporary art by native artists, and as well as these very unusual things. You might say, what is that doing in here? This is a deer hide from the 1600s, which is one of the very first representations of land in our country. So this is a reproduction of the original, which is in England, and they're never giving it back. But imagine this as our first depiction, or the lasting depiction of America. This is the leader of the whole area, and each circle represents one of the communities over which he is the sovereign leader. So it's a landscape in many ways.
It's a great building. And so the dimensions of this building are the same as they would have been in his time. He designed this,
Yes.
not with climate control in mind, but, and the interior would have been 1 floor like this, tall?
Yes. We tried to make it exactly as it would have. We have a count from Jasper Cropsey, another artist of the time, when he visited shortly after Thomas Cole died. And it's this very moving letter because Cropsey was a big Thomas Cole fan and friend, and he was really sad at the passing of this great painter and friend. Thomas Cole was only 47 when he died, and so it was a big shock. So Jasper Cropsey came in here and said, it's as if he's just walked out. It's almost as if he's going to walk back in. Everything is where he last left it. And then he goes on to describe the whole thing. So lucky for us, he was writing home to his wife about how this whole beautiful space looked. So we used that. For example, he said there was a entryway before you go into the main room. So we knew that that was part of it. In some of the surviving photographs, we can see that there was a loft. So we've recreated the loft space up there. And the ceiling height and everything is determined by the size of this building. It's a very high ceiling. And you can see this huge north light window that we close the shutters on the bottom sometimes for exhibitions when we don't want too much natural light to hurt the artwork. But in his time when he's painting in here, that would let in so much good light for painting.
And in the midst of some more modern art, right here on the south wall, I guess, is a pretty substantial painting by Thomas Cole himself. Which brings me back to a question from before. How would he have approached something like this? There's no photo reference. That's a huge canvas to trek into the wilderness.
Yes, good point by you. He would not have trekked that. That canvas is about 4 by 5 feet. So no, he's not carrying that on his back. His practice was to go into the most farthest reaches of the landscape where he could go, where he could find the wildest scenery, as he called it, with cliffs and waterfalls and something that looked like humans hadn't developed a farm there or something, right? And he would do lots of sketches. His favorite was pencil sketches. And then next to the little pencil outlines, he would write down the color and the shape and other little notes that you can't really communicate with a quick pencil sketch. Sometimes he also did what are called an oil sketch. So one of our treasured objects is that we have his paint box that he could take on hikes with him, and you open up the lid and you could fit a little wooden canvas or like a little wooden panel in the lid, and he could then paint a quick sketch in oil paint on the spot. So that way he could capture a little bit more of the color and what have you. And then all of that he brought back to this building, the studio, arranged it all, and he would then create a composition. So he might have a tree from one sketch and a mountain from New Hampshire, and so he would just put it all together to create the story that he wanted to tell. So you want to head over to the main house?
Let's do that.
Okay, let's do it. Our site is, because Thomas Cole was one of our earliest environmentalists, we decided that we needed to adopt as many environmentally friendly policies as we could here. So we have joined the pollinator pathway. We have a whole greening initiative where we list all the things that we are either currently doing or committed to doing, and we work towards them. So we've eliminated all pesticides and other things that might hurt wildlife. We have lots of areas where we've just let it grow. We have signs around the site that say,
I did see that.
let it grow. So there's meadows instead of just mown lawns. And so you see the results. You see wildlife, like a little frog, which they're very sensitive to pesticides. So it's good to see a frog hopping around. It means you're doing the right thing.
And as part of that initiative, my car is charging on one of your chargers right now, so thank you.
Yes, our EV charging stations was a great step in our greening initiative. I have an electric car too, so I was really glad to see it come on board.
So where are we now? I'm assuming his house, but...
Yeah, well, yes and no. So the funny thing is, it is where he lived, but it was never his. So that's a different answer. So he came here first in the 1820s and started renting studio space on the property. There was a family living here, the Thompson family, and he fell in love with one of the young ladies who lived in the house, who was the niece of the owner. She had been orphaned, and so she and her sisters were living here. So he got married, he moved into the house, but it was still owned by his in-laws. So it wasn't his house, even though now we call it the Thomas Cole house.
Oh, is that the outhouse?
Yeah,
That's a fancy outhouse.
I know, isn't it? It's so pretty. It also doubled as a kind of a garden pavilion from the outside. It looks so formal, and it's the same style as the house and the same colors as the house, and it's from the same time period as the house.
View.
I know.
Yeah, this is pretty good.
What a great view.
Yeah, you can see why one would be a landscape painter here.
And even though Catskill has built up, you're still at the tree line here, so it's kind of obscuring any development that's happened since then.
It's an illusion, but we love it. It really looks like there's no sign of the 21st century in this view, which we had to take down the electric wires to make that happen. But it is really quite an extraordinary straight view to the Catskills with nothing but beautiful colored trees in your way.
And those trees are on your property?
Yes, luckily.
Oh, good. So you can continue to create this illusion that
yes, we've
nothing is
shaped
beyond
them.
them. Yeah.
We planted low trees so that it hides the road, and then we planted some medium height trees that hides a little house over there. And so we sculpted this perfect unobstructed view.
Amazing.
On this beautiful porch, we have a panel with paintings that depict that view so that you can compare the view and the paintings. So if you want to walk over there, I can show you those.
Yes, please.
Okay.
That'd be great.
So on this panel in front of the view, we have two of many paintings he did of this view, but these are two of the major works, one from the 1830s and one from the 1840s, and you can see the changes. In fact, when he did this early one, as I think you said earlier, Jennifer, this was already a memory. So what it really looked like was closer to this painting where the trees are cleared. There's a railroad going through. That little puff of smoke is the railroad. And this tree in one painting has become a stump in the other painting. So he was watching all this happen right out in front of him here.
Incredible.
Yeah. Right. He did not think that the railroad magnates were good people. He called them copper-hearted barbarians.
Wow.
Yes.
Take that, Jay Gould.
Harsh words.
Exactly.
And he could kind of plan his hikes right from here,
Yeah.
at least directionally. Can kind of see where he's headed.
Another thing you could have seen here that you can no longer see is the Catskill Mountain House Hotel was right on a little ledge on that. You can just see a ledge out there. And in some of his paintings, you can see a tiny white fleck of paint, which is that hotel.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was burned in the 1960s, so it's no longer there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the pieces that are along the side here, are those are part of the new installation?
Yeah, there are these mirrors that we've mounted all around the site, and there's one here on the porch.
Yeah, I saw one around the front as well. Yes.
Those are from the artist Alan Michelson,
Right.
whose work is on view here through December 1st. This is made after an instrument in the 19th century called the Claude mirror, named after the painter Claude Lorraine, who was a famous landscape painter from Europe. And people use these convex mirrors to look at landscapes because it made them into a kind of a painting. When you put your back to the landscape and you look at it in the mirror, because it's curved, it frames the view with like arching trees, and the clouds even curve around the central view. So they felt like it made it painterly. So it was a thing, a popular trend of
using optics, but you're still using the natural landscape as well. I love that.
yeah.
Live selfie.
Live selfie.
So we're entering the main house. So let's see, we're going to go into the west parlor. And here we have something called Hidden Stories, where in 4 places around this room, there are pieces of paper on a table that will come to life and show a story that's brought out in the letters. So luckily, a lot of these conversations were recorded in letters, and so we have them to show to you. These are all reproductions of the paintings because the originals are in museums all over the world. So on the first floor, we have reproduced some of Thomas Cole's greatest hits, and then upstairs we have all the original paintings that are in our collection. So here, because of the motion detector, it noticed you entered the room, and this is bringing out a conversation. The whole room is kind of about the business of art, and it turns out that the business manager was Thomas Cole's wife, Mariah. She was the one with the head for business. Thomas Cole was more of a poet and not really smart about those money things. So she, in the letters, is seen giving him advice on how to negotiate with his patrons who would, they wanted a painting, and so they would commission something, and then it didn't always go well if it didn't turn out the way they wanted it to go. And so she was trying to give him some advice about how to manage those things. One time he sold a painting and then he was not allowed to exhibit it. It was off in some private home and never to be seen again. And so she says, look, make sure you have it in the bargain that you get to exhibit the painting. And so it's clear that she was the one giving the business advice.
So the room is set up with instruments and some fruit and a tea set and papers and books opened. Mm-hmm. Is it meant to suggest that he just stepped out for a bit?
Yeah, actually, I'm glad you mentioned that. A lot of historic houses have a photograph of the room when the famous person lived there, and they try to just recreate that and make you feel like they've just stepped out. And our motto that I've repeated to the staff over the years is, why don't we make it look like the artist has just stepped in? Why don't we bring out his words so that you can hear from him and hear the stories so that the historic characters are not so absent? You know, so you'll see in the other parlor that we have created a video in which Thomas Cole actually speaks to you about what he's most passionate and ambitious about. Because you kind of want to hear from the historic figures, right? So that's the idea. This object here in the parlor is one of my favorites. It's Thomas Cole's top hat and the case for the top hat, which is in the shape of a top hat. And look at the shape of this hat. It's so tall. It's almost comical, but in his day, it would have been very distinguished. And I like that he wanted to put on this gentleman's hat because he himself was not part of a gentleman class. He was more of a middle class person, but he clearly wanted to be seen as a peer of his patrons and people who were buying his paintings. So he puts on his gentleman's hat.
Be part of society.
Yes. Well, we just walked into the sitting room, and because Thomas Cole married and moved in with his in-laws, it was a very busy household. And so this was really his own private space for his own family. He and Mariah had 5 children, so they really needed a space of their own. So this was like their own suite of rooms here on the second floor.
In general, it's a lot more than an art museum. There's a lot going on here, and cultural and historic context that you're putting up on display.
Yeah, it's a mix of things. It's an art museum, but it's also a historic site, and history was happening all around them. So I think it's a really exciting opportunity to bring that out. It's more than just a painting on the wall. It's the story behind it, and it's the story of how our country was made. People are really quite astounded that all of this was happening during Thomas Cole's lifetime. So this is a gallery filled with Thomas Cole paintings. All around the perimeter are these beautiful paintings, either in our own collection or on long-term loan, so you can really immerse yourself in the original artworks. And right now, in the middle of the room is a contemporary artwork by the artist Alan Michelson. So just up through December 1st, we have a whole table full of cabins. And you'll notice they're all different types of cabins, but they're created using this text. What is this text? Well, this log cabin, for example, is made out of the historic copies of the historic treaties. They were all broken with the native people that lived here. So the cabin is a settler's anchor on the ground, and the treaties talk about how that land would always be preserved for the original people here. It's very powerful.
Was this the family's collection, or was this collected after? This curio cabinet?
This is Thomas Cole's own collection. And some of the labels on them are in his handwriting, so you can see where he picked up the object. Some people are a little bit, conflicted about the fact that he could pick up a mosaic from Pompeii and just bring it home, but back then it was just a ruin. There wasn't a gate where you buy a ticket and crowds, and so people could just pick up and walk away with anything they found. This is Thomas Cole's bedroom down the hall. Thomas Cole and Mariah, I should say. Definitely his wife's bedroom as well.
I love that everything is just out. Nothing's behind glass. And I guess that has not been a problem.
Yeah, no, it's a balance, because we hate to put up what are called velvet ropes and separate you from the house, because we want people to come in and feel like a guest rather than some kind of intruder, right? So we have docents all around, we have people all around, we have cameras all around, and things like these teacups are actually, although you can't tell, they're actually attached to the table, so you can't just pick it up and run off with it. So, there are ways that museums can handle these sorts of things.
Yeah, it's just very welcoming.
Yeah.
And even though I'd like to pick up a teacup, I will not.
Well, we've done the new studio, the old studio, the main house, the Cole Center. I think you pretty much have it.
Great.
I think so.
And the property itself is worth mentioning. It's just a beautiful place to walk around, plenty of space to stroll. So I guess that's something that guests are able to do. And how you mentioned earlier how big the property was when he was in residence. How much property do you own now?
It's about, I think I said maybe 6 acres right here. And so we have flower gardens, we have a kitchen garden.
And I love all the benches around. To sit, to be inspired, draw, write, just take it all in.
We place sketchbooks around in case you
Yes,
get
as we're walking around, there's
inspired.
baskets with sketchbooks. I love that. And is it explorethomascole.org, or is that a different website?
We have 2 websites. So thomascole.org is about this site, visiting here, what you'll find here. And then explorethomascole.org is all about the paintings. So it's a whole database of paintings you can search and zoom in, and it's like an in-depth course on Thomas Cole.
Perfect. Thank you so much to Betsy Jacks. We're so thrilled. Thank you so much for having us. Thank you to Brett Barry for his amazing skills and co-hosting with us here on Valley Girls today. And to Olivia, thank you so much for your audio help. This has just been such a pleasure. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming here. Such a pleasure to have you.